bring up some notes. Well, that's interesting. Cool. All right, so I think we're rolling out to the interwebs. Let me just double check on that. Give it one more second. Perfect. All right. So for those of you who haven't attended before and aren't familiar with this session, this is what we call the Business Podcast Mastermind. And this is a session that was started with a few talented friends in the business and podcasting space who expanded it to create a weekly event where a wider audience can join. Give you a little bit about the folks who are here are some of our regulars. You see Henry Lopez. He's a serial entrepreneur, small business coach, host of the top-rated How Business podcast, dedicated to helping others start, run, and grow their small businesses. I'm Ethan Janney. My most recent endeavor here, which has taken off pretty quickly, is a podcast and now associated business endeavor called Edge of NFT and the Edge of Company. And we focus on the top 1% in NFTs today, as well as what will stand the test of time, as well as pursuing some other projects in the NFT space, including, I don't know if I let you guys know, we're going to be running a convention in Los Angeles called NFTLA in March. And we will have none other than Mark Cuban as one of the speakers, as well as Neil Strauss, Nicole Buffett, Steve Aoki. It's turning out to be a really incredible event. So that's exciting. And then Mark Hayward we have here as well from the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. And he is a guy who successfully quit his corporate job, became independent, and actually got his independent career rolling here within the past few years, does some real estate, also does some work helping people start podcasts and book guests and things like that. So we're happy to have all three of us here, and we'll get to know our guest today. His name is Kevin Mills, and what I'd like to do is hand it over to him to give an introduction, what he'd like to focus on most for the session before we get into the questions. So Kevin, welcome to the session. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and make sure you're unmuted. That always helps.
I should probably make sure I'm unmuted, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. Like you said, my name is Kevin Mills. I'm one of the co-founders of Streamline Podcasts. I actually quit my day job as a loan officer last year to focus on the business full time. We're a full-scale podcast production agency. We have served over 150 podcasters in a variety of different industries and niches. And currently we're producing about 10,000 minutes of audio each and every month. We provide a really, really good service for the price. That was kind of one of my main complaints when I first got into podcasting. It blew my mind how much went into the back end of getting a podcast out there to the world in a way that was going to be presented as a professional manner, right? And I realized that it was certainly not something that I wanted to do myself, and I didn't want to learn how to do all of it. And so I started trying to find solutions out there that I could outsource all of the hard work of the podcast to. And to be quite frank, there wasn't anything out there that was affordable that I knew that I could trust. So I found three friends that I had actually met in a podcast mastermind, and we started the company together. And it's been a wonderful journey ever since. We've got a fantastic team that I love to death. We've created some awesome working relationships over the past couple of years, and I'm happy to be here and answer any questions I can.
Awesome. Yeah. Great to have you here, and would love to just dive into the history a little bit more about how it came to be. You gave us some, basics, but like, tell us when did the idea specifically arise? You know, you mentioned you got together with some guys that you were in a group with. Um, was it during one of the sessions? Was it independently? Did you all kind of surface the idea together and start pursuing it? Was it one of you that brought it to the surface? How did that? What were the nuts and bolts of how this actually came to be?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The mastermind that we were all in, it was a really high ticket mastermind. We had each paid, I think it was like $10,000 to be in this group. And so the relationships that we built with each other consequently were very strong and very close, and to the point to where we were kind of, bouncing ideas off each other right and left. And that had kind of become the relationship that we all had with each other. We knew we wanted to do something together. We just weren't really quite sure what it was. And, that mastermind group was about podcasting, and it was basically how to create an income from your podcast. And each of us had, a podcast about a variety of different topics. But we all realized that, like I mentioned earlier, that pain point was the post production. For each and every single one of us, that was the hardest part. It was creating show notes and editing the background noise, and uploading it in a consistent manner, and getting guests in a consistent manner, and doing all of this consistently, because this group that we had just um invested a good amount of money into, one of the most important things that they kept driving into our head was that in order to be successful with podcasting, you have to be consistent. And like I said, with post production being as daunting of a task as it was, we found that really difficult to stay consistent doing that. And so we had kind of tried going the VA route, trying to find some people on Fiverr and Upwork and etc. that we thought could handle these tasks that we needed done appropriately. But even then, it was kind of a jumbled up mess trying to manage all that, to be quite honest. And we knew that if we were having these problems, chances were a lot of other podcasters were having that problem as well. And we just really wanted to solve the problem, you know? And so we put our heads together, went to work, and we figured out how to create a system with technology that could manage everything really efficiently. We found really talented people that could get it done at a pretty cost effective price. And we were able to put together some offers that we thought were, positioned very well in the market, relative to what you provide for what you pay. And since then, it's just been hitting the ground running, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm one thing that I feel really good about is I go to bed every night knowing that the work that we're doing for our clients is very good work. And we're very proud to be able to participate in getting people's message out there, whatever that message may be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's interesting. So I have a podcast called the Run With It podcast with a friend, Chris Justin, and also we have this group that we've been a part of, and it's interesting to talk through all this because we're all sort of entrepreneurial in this group, and there's a lot of business endeavor around what we're doing. So actually, one of the guests on our Run With It podcast. Who that podcast, people bring business ideas. So we have successful entrepreneurs come on. They talk about business ideas that they don't have the time to start, but they think would be really great. We go through how you might get it started, all this stuff. So it's interesting. We had a guest on Run With It named Sani Abdul-Jabbar, no relation to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but probably a better podcast guest from what we hear. And yeah, it just, by the way, if I've heard through the grapevine, for whatever, there's these rumors that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a terrible podcast guest. Excellent basketball player, but
Interesting
probably
rumor.
he can only give you sound bites, like you would like on the court after a game or something. Anyways, so Sani, he's Pakistan. He goes, is it Pakistan? He has connections in terms of like having some outsourcing, and so he was like, I want a podcast in a box company, like that was his business idea. And he was actually so excited about it that, he wanted to collaborate with me and potentially even this group. We invited him to this group to talk about like starting a thing like exactly what you're doing, well, not
That's
exactly,
hilarious.
but
Yep.
different from
Well,
what you're doing,
it's
but
funny
stuff.
you say podcast in a box. We have a product called the Pod Box,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's basically the podcast in a box, right? You
Uh-huh.
got your microphone, you got your intro and outro, the cover art, the hosting platform, the whole nine yards, and
Right.
editing. And so it's funny you say that, but also, for and I'm sure a lot of people in podcasting have thought it's a great idea, but to be quite frank, it's a lot of work.
It
It's
is a
it's a
lot of work.
lot of work to
Yes. I
manage a
was going to say, I
production
mean,
company.
kudos, right? Kudos for launching it and getting it going and rolling with it and building a team that could all stay together and work on it.
Right, the team that can all stay together, that's the hard part. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so there's certainly been, and I mean, even since we've started, I've seen quite a few competitors come and go in the 2 years that we've been in business. And I'm sure it's going to continue to be that way because it is a hard industry. But what I was going to get at with that is we actually offer white label services as well. So, if you're someone who thinks that this is something that I could market really effectively, but I don't want to get into the weeds of actually managing the team and making sure work gets done and et cetera. We've got a really good offer for that I'd be happy to talk to anyone about. And you're actually editing some of the top business podcasts out there through that program. So
Very cool.
I'd love to
That's very
talk to
cool.
anyone about that has any questions.
Yeah. No, that's great to know for sure. Because maybe that is a good route for any and all of us. And also, I know, I mean, the conversation came up because Sani wanted to start his own podcast, right? It was a little bit intimidated, so maybe he's someone to connect you with or whatever. But um, uh, yeah, again, kudos. And I'm curious about the group. You said it was a podcast mastermind. It was set up by a third party, not one of the people in your small group, or how did you
Right.
come about that group? And
So yeah, so you might have heard of him. His name's Travis Chappell. He's the host.
we were going to have him here. We had he sent his kind of co-host that
Eric
handles Web's programming.
Swerzinski.
Yes, we had
Yeah.
him here.
Yeah. So Travis Chappell hosts Build Your Network podcast. It was his mastermind.
Okay.
And so there was, I want to say 15 of us in total that had, paid that upfront sum. And it was a 6-month mastermind. So there were, I believe there was 2 in-person events where we all got together in a house and rented it out. And then there were, weekly calls and so on and so forth.
Very cool. Yeah, that's really great to see this stuff running and rolling. So I have I'll just pull up your site here so we can all get some context. We might not all have a chance to look it up just to kind of show what you're able to offer. Let me just see if I can pull that up. So you've got this starter package, you've got this growing package, and this crushing it package, and it looks like it's all centered around how many minutes you might need in any given month.
Yeah.
So
So when you hit the website here, you're going to see those 3 different packages, and they're all basically the same package.
mhm.
They just have the amount of minutes per month that you're going to be doing, like you had mentioned there. We do other things as well. We have additional add ons, but you have to have one of these base packages before you can get into the add ons. So we also do video editing, video bites, audiograms, transcription, as well as posting it to your WordPress account.
Okay.
And all of that stuff's going to be more affordable than what you're seeing right here in front of you. But this is the base package. And
Right.
in this base package, you're going to get full audio editing. So we're actually going to have somebody go through and listen through the entire episode. So if you vocally say something you want edited, we will
Mhm.
catch that.
Mhm.
We're also going to take out, the most majority of your ums and ahs. Sometimes we'll leave some to make it flow because obviously most conversation has a little bit of that.
Mhm.
But we also will level your audio tracks between you and the guest, remove any excess background noise, etc. We'll ID3 tag the files to put in your metadata for the search engines. We're also creating SEO optimized show notes. So that's going to have basically a paragraph description of the episode. Then it's going to have time-stamped breakdowns based on what you're discussing in that timestamp. It's going to have tweetable quotes as well as any calls to action that you may want to include in those show notes. We're also going to create a social media graphic that you can use to share on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and it'll be resized for those different platforms. We will also upload it to your hosting platform. And if you don't have a hosting platform, each one of those packages actually includes 30 days of subscription to Libsyn Pro. And then we'll also send you an email when the episode is live. And if it's an interview episode, we can reach out to your guest for you to let them know it's live. So as you can see, that basic package, for the most part, for most podcasts, it covers everything you need. And it's at a really affordable price. And then, like I said, if you want to add on video editing, transcription, or any of that other stuff, we certainly can.
Great. Yeah. And it's in, we've had, full disclosure, we've had other folks on here that do similar stuff too. I don't know if you're familiar with Podetize. Have you heard
I
of
am.
this? Yeah. So we're going to make this some sort of, we're going to have you guys have some sort of rap battle or something to figure out who's
Let's do it.
the king of podcast production.
I'm for it. I'm for it. Let's go.
No, but yeah, this is really really useful stuff. Before I open it up in the next couple of minutes to the other guys, I'm just curious. We've been sitting here for I don't know, it might even be 2 years now that we've been doing this podcast Mastermind, and of course we see patterns, right? One of my biggest things that I love to tell people, which I think is a surprise to most people, in as far as framing of podcasting, I think about it as a website almost, right? But it's just an audio version of what a website can offer. And what I mean by that is websites are very versatile. A lot of people pigeonhole a podcast and they say, you what you want to do is you want to get up and rolling, you want to get a bunch of listeners and get advertisers, right? But like that's not what you always do with the website, is it? You don't always like get a bunch of page views and get advertisers. Sometimes you're there because you want to attract clients. Sometimes you want to get people to have like a one-on-one chat with you, and all of these different ways that you can utilize a website with low traffic, right? Like you can have a podcast with low traffic, but you can leverage that to hundreds of thousands or more dollars of revenue a year. It's all not just downloads, numbers, and advertisers. And I think thinking about podcasts that way and being creative, right, is super useful. And I've also been thinking lately of different directions to take this group, and one of them is also just podcasting kind of bleeds into this whole new world that's almost opened up since COVID of Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, and sort of these things that kind of seem like podcasts, but they don't call them podcasts, but they could be a podcast. It's just this sort of like sonic world of possibility. So all that to say, give you a little bit about what I've taken away from us being able to interview podcasters and reflect on it very regularly. Any kind of interesting or counterintuitive things and conclusions you've come up with about podcasting since you've been studying it so deeply?
Yeah. First off, I would say that I 100% agree with everything you just said. Obviously, that makes tons of sense. And I'll tell you what I've been thinking about.
That's good, because we only have guests here who will agree to 100% agree with that.
Otherwise we'd have kicked you off already.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, but I mean, seriously, you're 100% on point there with that. A lot of people, I see it all the time when we first do onboarding calls and things like that with clients. They think the only way to monetize their podcast is with advertising dollars, when in reality, that is how the very few and far between podcasts actually monetize. There's a variety of other ways, and masterminds are actually a great way to monetize. There's no reason every single podcast, not every single, but the majority of podcasts shouldn't have a $29.99 a month mastermind. You only need 10 people to sign up for it to make it worth your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I've been thinking about lately that I think is really interesting, and I feel like a lot of people kind of use this as a way to describe podcast initially, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. Is that our podcasts are basically like mini internet radio stations, and to the point of you don't have to pigeonhole your podcast into X, Y, and Z. If you can build a consistent listenership, just like if you had owned a radio station, you can use that podcast to accomplish a variety of things. And also from a podcast host standpoint, if we look at it in that mindset of it being a radio station, a businesses used to invest a lot of money trying to get on radio in front of their ideal customers in a local market. We can now do that on podcasts through hyper targeted Spotify ads or, you know, other types of hyper targeted ads. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to take away some market share from radio as this space continues to grow. I think some people would call me naive for saying that, but I don't think so.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's very
We'll
interesting.
see in 10 years.
We'll see. Yeah, and just before I hand it over to the others, there's wow, what was the other thing I wanted to ask you? Um, I forgot it. All right. Well, I'll remember. Henry, Mark, do you got anything you want to chime in with?
I've
Curious
got a
about your
quick question for you,
opinions.
Kevin. So, you said you don't want to get into the weeds of the editing and stuff. So, you said you built a team and you looked at Upwork in various places. Where did you actually settle on audio editors?
So we're actually all over the world. We're in about 6 different countries right now. We've got employees in Canada, the US, in Colombia, in Costa Rica, in the Philippines, in Indonesia. Um, we had an employee in Russia, but I think she actually left here recently. So we're kind of all over the place, and that's kind of the strategy as well.
And is your idea that these are specialists that you pay for purely editing each of the podcasts? Yeah.
Yes. So there's a variety of different positions, so to speak, within our company. We have audio editors, content specialists, video editors, design specialists. And so, depending on the background and the experience, yes, they're in those particular branches. So, like I mentioned, I don't want to be in the weeds of audio editing. So, when it comes to um, if there's ever anything that's like super detailed that needs a lot of expertise as far as fixing a clip or something like that, then we've got a guy on our team that has about 15 years of experience with editing audio, and he can tell me anything and everything I need to know about it. So that's kind of the strategy we've taken. Is we've looked for really talented and experienced people in these locations that, quite frankly, um, they don't have to make near as much money as I would have to pay someone here in America or
Right.
England to do that same quality, if not better, level of work.
And how long, like, to get that team together? It was what you've been going 2 years, have you?
Yeah. So I would say the team we've got now, it really took about a year to get together. The first year, I mean, we did good for what we had, but we've made huge improvements over the past year with that team. So it's definitely been an iterative process trying to find and place those necessary people, and it's a constant hiring process, to be quite honest, especially in the growth mode that we've been in. We're basically always hiring.
And just one last question, I'll let Henry jump in a minute. Do you do
I
corporate?
remembered my question too, so
Okay.
I'll come in right after you.
Do you do corporate podcasts as well?
Kind of, sort of. So right now, first off, I'll preface with the majority of our clients are small business owners. I would not call them corporate clients. We do have a couple of clients that we are doing corporate, more hands-on work for. But we're actually in the middle of launching it's going to be a separate company, but it's a sister affiliate company to Streamline Podcast called podhouse.io. And it is a corporate B2B podcasting solution that actually provides the podcast host, episode scripting, videography work, the whole 9 yards, turnkey solutions for companies.
And just what's the name of your business? I missed it when at the start.
Streamline Podcasts.
Thank you. Sorry, Ethan, go for it.
Yeah, and also just we talked about it before we launched, and for the viewers, I'll explain why my background looks like this. This is Nolan Bushnell's workshop. He's the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, and I was speaking with him the other day, and he let me take a picture so that I could have my own, mad scientist background here. But so yeah, my question was, I want to go back to that moment where you said, I think I want to drop 10K on a podcast mastermind. Was it about that you knew you were super serious about podcasting? Was it commensurate to like a level of frustration with your podcasting situation? Was it just like, hey, could be a cool thing to explore? Like, where are you at in your journey that made you want to take that relatively big step? Unless you're a billionaire, then it was probably like super.
Yeah, no, definitely not a billionaire. I mean, I was a loan officer. I make good money, but I'm not wealthy, right?
Right.
And but so to be quite honest and frank about it, Travis Chappell, that's the guy I paid to go into that mastermind. I actually kind of knew him personally. I had met him before he even started his podcast.
Oh, okay.
And so I saw his journey from start to finish and where he was able to take the podcast and what kind of life it provided for him and etc. And I thought, hey, if he can do it, I want to do it. And, why reinvent the wheel, and why not take what he's applied and go straight for it? And hey, at the end of the day, it turned out, podcast hosting is not necessarily my dream or vision, but
so you
it
didn't
led
have
me to
a podcast before you started?
No, I did not.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I actually paid him to do coaching, and then I started my podcast, and then during that mastermind was kind of like when I was trying to grow it or whatever. But during that process is when we discovered, this idea for Streamline Podcasts, and it's what has turned into my career.
Cool. Yeah. And so you did start a podcast, but you're not an active podcaster right now?
Yeah. So I started a podcast, did about 35 episodes. And then, to be honest, I just was putting so much time and effort into Streamlined, and I wanted to put every extra effort I had into it. And, at the time I was still working as a loan officer. I didn't quit until the fall of this past year. So I will probably be starting another show this year now that I've regained some time back. But no, it is not active right now.
What was the podcast called? And can we go back and
Yeah,
listen to the archival episodes?
You can. There's 35 great, wondrous episodes for you to feast your ears upon. It's called Screw the Side Hustle, and it's basically about going all in on, the passions that ignite you. That's kind of the motto I've always lived my life by, except for this latest venture. I side hustled Streamline for the first year, but the only reason I did that was because I had 3 other great business partners, and we kind of made one full person, right? Otherwise, I'm a pretty big believer in when you've got something on your plate, you just need to go after it and get it done.
But I do like being able to say you ultimately decided to screw the side hustle.
I did. Yep.
All right, Henry. I'll hand it over to you.
The devil's
What you
screen.
got for us?
Sure. I guess I'll start at a high level, Kevin. You mentioned what you called a professional show, producing a professional show, but affordably was the idea and still is. So what do you think makes for a professional show for average podcasters like us who are not procasters and still doing it on a budget? What do you think are the key ingredients?
Yeah, that's a great point, because professional technically means you're getting paid for it. But yeah, to your point, when I say professional, I'm more meaning what it looks like, what it sounds like. And to me, the key ingredients to that is audio quality. There's no, in the majority of podcasts, there is no video. You're just listening on Spotify or iTunes, etc. And so it's the natural inclination of the human body to, whenever you only have one sense being triggered, to hyper focus on that one sense. And so when we're only listening to audio, we're going to be picking off each little imperfection that you're normally not going to be paying attention to with a YouTube channel or an in-person event or something like that. So the audio quality to me was number one priority. And a lot of that can be, obviously, I'm going to say your editing is a pretty important part of that. But also, even more than that, is your setting, right? So making sure your AC is not going, your computer fans aren't making an outrageous noise, making sure the dogs aren't barking, making sure, you're using a decent microphone. It doesn't have to be fancy. The microphone I'm using right now is probably a $60 microphone.
Yeah.
And it's going to work perfectly fine. And then secondly, I would say it's really important to have clear, concise show notes. To be quite honest, most people don't really read the entirety of show notes, but they can be a great resource if you've got, timestamps broken down into different segments. That way, if someone has to stop, they can come back, catch up where they left off from. And then third, I would say, is just quality of content. And this is less something someone else can do, and this is more something you have to do. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to listen to crappy content. And it's certainly not going to sound professional, because a professional show, a show that's making money, is not going to be junk. The people are going to want to listen to it for some reason or another. So those would be my three most important things.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. For those of us who do interviews, one of the challenges with audio quality is the guest's equipment. I know for myself, I require that they have to have an external microphone, but what are your thoughts on that, and how do you see other people solve that issue?
My favorite way to solve the issue is to send them a microphone. It's hard, it's clunky, it's expensive, but that's how you're going to get the best result. My second favorite solution to that issue would be taking an extra 5 minutes before you start the show to make sure that they have their microphone settings correct, to make sure that they are in fact using an external microphone, to make sure that they've got headphones plugged in, make sure that you give them the quick little pointers about, hey, if you've got any background noise that you think the microphone could pick up on, if we could eliminate that. We put a lot of time and effort into producing this podcast, and if you could do me the respect of trying to make sure that you have done everything you can to make this a good experience. Just having those conversations, I think, will 9 times out of 10 result in a better end result. At the end of the day, so our team, I think, is a really, really talented audio editing team. I've seen them do some pretty amazing things, but at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do with audio. Right. There have been occasions, especially from interview shows and guest audio, where it's rough. And in those cases, I would say that the only thing that makes the episode halfway listenable is if the host is recording that episode with dual tracks. That way we can at least make yours sound as good as it can possibly sound. that's about all you can do.
Yeah, I take advantage of that Zoom option to have the separate tracks, and we find that to be the case. Is Zoom what most of your clients are using, or what's the common platform?
It is Zoom by far. I would say probably 80%. Obviously, some use Riverside, and I think we've got some that are using StreamYard. But yeah, Zoom is by far the most frequently used.
I have to say, I didn't start on Zoom way back when. I started with the platform escapes me. What was the popular Skype? Yes, thank you. Before Skype had it, they didn't even have a native recording tool, so you had to use a third-party tool.
Yeah,
it was so unstable.
What's the Skype sound?
Yeah, exactly. And then I went to another platform and it was very unstable. But I have to say, Zoom has been extremely stable over the last couple of years. I really have had zero problems. Just a little bit more on show notes and some additional best practices. The time stamps, that's there just, as you said, if the listener wants to pick back off or go to a specific topic. Is that why the time stamping?
Yeah, that's, two main reasons. That's the biggest reason. And I know me as a podcast listener, I do that quite frequently. I'll get into an episode, I get a call, whatever, the day goes by. 5 hours later, I may come back and finish that episode, and it can be really helpful, to have that timestamp to be able to see where it stopped if for some reason I've gone to listen to something else, or etc. But then secondly, it's also a clean way to be able to break out kind of summaries about what you cover in your content, because in an hour-long episode, 9 times out of 10, you're covering quite a few things, right? So timestamping, a 3-minute segment or a 5-minute segment, depending on how long that episode is, can be a really good way to break out that different information.
Excellent. What other thoughts do you have as it relates to the show notes, or even the metadata notes in the episode? I mean, one of the challenges, of course, is a limitation of how long that description can be for Apple. What Apple will let you put 500 and whatever it is characters. So any thoughts there that leads to that, not just SEO, that's something separate, but just discovery of your show? Any thoughts there or common practices?
Yeah, so I would say 2 things. One, ID3 tags are very important. We actually did a little case study on this. We took one podcast and we took episodes that were, I believe it was 6 months old, so quite seasoned content. And we took 8 episodes and we did not do anything to the ID3 tags. We just used standard what the hosting platform put in there. And then we took 8 episodes and added additional information to the ID3 tags. And we saw about a 22% increase in downloads on those episodes that had been ID3 tags. So we find that that's pretty important to do. Second,
on ID3 tags, I've been using the Libsyn feature now to add them. Is any issue with that you're aware of?
There's not necessarily any issue. I haven't used Libsyn's ID3 tag tool, so I'm not sure if it lets you add additional keywords to the episode. If it doesn't, I know the software we use does, and we use a free software. I believe it's called ID3 Editor.
Yeah, that's what I used to use, but I was eliminating that step. Now, the keywords, my understanding was that Apple ignores them, but you're finding them to be valuable on other directories.
So that's the thing, is at the end of the day, Apple isn't the only directory. And it's certainly turning into that more and more as each month goes by. Apple seems to be losing a little bit more and more of the market share to other platforms, especially Spotify at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the only other platform I'm seeing any traction with is Spotify.
Also, you had pointed out the limitations on character amounts with show notes. That's why I find it is really important to create a web page or a blog page of sorts for that episode. That way you can put long, detailed show notes that are SEO rich. That way, when someone goes Googling for something along those topics, ideally that episode gets somewhere in that query. That would be my suggestion for that.
Okay. And then the last topic, and all of us can jump in here, is just a little bit more on your thoughts on income, generated an income, or as we used to say, monetizing a podcast. You shared the mastermind idea, which I think now people now calling masterminds cohorts, because I seem to hear that term more now. But any other thoughts or things that you might want to share on how you advise people to perhaps look at monetizing a show?
Yeah, I actually ran across something pretty interesting here recently. So Travis Chappell, the guy we were talking about earlier, he has a company called Guestio, and that is basically a guest connection platform for your podcasts. And the differentiator with his platform from some of the other ones that you'll see out there is he's kind of going after more of the celebrities and higher ticket guests that you may be able to find. But he's actually releasing a new feature on there that will allow you to offer to create essentially sponsored episodes for your podcast. So people can elect to pay you $500, $1,000, whatever that fee you feel reasonable is, to come onto your podcast for an hour and talk about whatever it is that they're trying to promote. And at the end of the day, you still have the authority to say, no, I don't want to promote that. You're not getting the money for it, but
right.
You're not necessarily tied into anything. So I think that's pretty interesting for certain people. And I'm curious to see how that plays out. And then I would say, I feel like this is a no-brainer, but in case it isn't, is using the podcast to essentially accelerate your main business. So if you're a real estate agent, use the podcast as a way to network with other real estate agents who can send you referral business, or to network with divorce attorneys who can send you referral business. I don't know. You get the idea, right? I think, to be honest, I think that's one of the best ways that you can make money from a podcast, is using it to accelerate your main business.
Yeah, we had I brought a guy on that was in my network, and he was helping to produce a podcast. The production was not that important. The audience was not that important, but it's exactly what you're saying. It was just a nice reason to have a conversation with the type of guests that they served for their business, to build that relationship and just get those referrals. And that was basically it. And it's just the format's there. Yes, they promote it. Yes, they put out social posts and things like that. But it's way more about the conversation that they're having with the guest than it is about any other leverage point.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was super interesting that you brought up the white labeling possibility through your business. So I want to make sure, if you have anything more to say on that or share about that, we could have a little time to do that. So when did you start thinking about doing that, and what does that involve? How do you work with people doing white labeling?
Yeah. So there's actually two different ways that you can work with our business to essentially, I don't know how to frame this other than get a slice of the action, right? So you can either work with us as an affiliate or as a white label partner. And we came out with both of these programs about 6 months after we went into business, and we've kind of just been refining them ever since. For the affiliate program, anybody is more than welcome to sign up for that. For the affiliate program, it's pretty simple and comparable to what you would see with other affiliate programs. You basically get a link to send people to, and anyone that clicks on that link, it tracks their cookies for 30 days. So if they convert within 30 days, you're going to get that credit. You'll also give them a coupon code that they can use that will give them 10% off whenever they go to subscribe. So that gives you a little bit of leverage for them to, use your link. And then you actually get a $200 commission every time someone signs up for one of our packages using that affiliate link. So this is a really good way if you just want to begin to essentially making a little bit extra money from your already warm network. of podcasters. And then the second way is with white labeling. And this is where you essentially are able to run your own podcast production agency. So, you, Ethan, create Ethan's Podcasting Production Company, Inc. And you have all of the client facing relationships. You go find clients and you also answer their emails and concerns and etc. Whereas we are the ones that are actually handling all of the work on the back end. We create a portal that's branded to your colors and theme and everything with your logo, and you can embed that into your website, allow people to upload things there directly. We handle all the work. If there's ever a revision on anything for any reason, they will request that revision from you. Then you just turn around and tell us, we do it, and it gets back to them. So at the end of the day, we're doing every single piece of actual work on the content. We're providing all of the infrastructure and systems. You are just managing the front-facing client relationships. And that is a little bit more affordable than what you see on our website. For anyone who is interested in that, I'm happy to hop on a call to actually dive into some of the pricing there. But what I will say is, to access that white label pricing, you have to be sending us at least 360 minutes a month of audio. If it's under that, what you can do is just subscribe to a normal plan, and you can still function as a white label, have your portal and your own business and etc. But you'll have to at least be on one of those plans.
Where do we go to sign up for the affiliate? I don't see it on the website.
Yeah, so I can send you a link. It's actually in the client side. So after you register, it allows you to sign up for a link. But I can send you a direct link here in a second that will allow you to access it. All right. So just put that in the chat there. streamlinepodcast.com/affiliate-area.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting resource, for folks like us. Even as we talk about it, since we were so aligned with it, perhaps it's even that becomes sort of part of what we do here. Because, I think generally, as we talked about working together to do things like that, I think it came upon, well, we've all got our existing responsibilities. And so who does what, and, who's going to do all this stuff. Right. And I think if you spread it among 3 people, for example, I'm not making a suggestion that we do this per se. I'm saying it could be a situation where the 3 of us did that. Right. And then, all we got to do is, maybe even outsource the communication process and handle the glitches. Right. And make sure we can provide that for people. Who knows? But either way, I think that's really cool that you're doing that. And I think, again, that's really spotting a pain point, right, in the industry. I mean, first of all, it's the creation of the podcast and the production of it. But then there's also, this point right in between the folks that sort of have the sort of business relationships, wherewithal to communicate, to sort of advise and help people produce a podcast. But they're not going to lift to start this production company. As you said, it's quite complicated, and I'm sure you found a way to make it simple enough to enjoy the work. But yeah, that's really cool that you've got that. So before we hop off, we might ask another question or 2 after this. But tell people where they can go to find out more. We got this affiliate link, of course, but I want to make sure it's really clear if you want to share any social links or the website in detail.
Yeah. Honestly, streamlinepodcast.com is the best place to go. And just hit if you're ready to sign up, click a package and we'll contact you pretty soon thereafter, definitely no later than 24 hours on setting up a onboarding call, and we'll get you started. But if you have any questions, we're happy to take calls with you. Just hit the contact us page, leave us a message. We will absolutely handle any questions, concerns, thoughts, feedback, ideas. We're here for it.
Cool. I'll ask one more question maybe before we sign off, unless somebody else has something burning they wanted to get in there. Just sort of like a situational actually comes from very personal experience. I have a couple of things that I've been recording, right? We record these sessions, but it's never been actually published as a podcast, although we've talked about it. Rob used to say, hey, maybe this should be published as a podcast. Also run another meeting on Saturdays in the piano industry, quite similar, just got a bunch of recorded content. Actually did start it as a podcast, but again, like getting it published and edited was, more than fit in for everything. So have you had these situations where somebody not only just has a weekly show that they're just getting started or transferring, but they've actually got a bunch of content, they just want to hand it over to you and you can kind of like create the podcast out of these recorded sessions, and it's more backlog material? Have you done stuff like that, and how do you handle it?
Yeah, we certainly have done things like that in the past. In full transparency, though, every time I've done that for clients before, they've already been a client and they just had a bunch of this extra stuff backlog that we had to get through. And so we work out a per episode deal based on what all they want. I would say if you're basically wanting to get an idea of how much that would cost you, it's going to depend on A, how much it is, and B, what all exactly that you're wanting done. But as a good rule of thumb, you can look at the pricing on our website and basically break it down by minute. So that base package is $249 or $279 for 120 minutes. And then, so if you divide $279 by 120 minutes, that should give you an hourly rate or a minute rate of, I think it should be $2.33 a minute. So it should never be more expensive than that if we're just talking about audio editing, show notes, upload, graphics, the basic package. If it's more than that, it's going to be an additional fee, but we also do bulk discounts. So, it just depends on if we're talking about lots and lots and lots of hours, it's probably going to be a little bit under the $2 and a minute range. So, we got
before we close, quick question. What do you do YouTube? What if your clients want to publish to YouTube as well? And do you do that as well?
We do, but right now we're only doing YouTube editing for podcasts specifically. So if this is a vlog or, something that requires a multi-camera sequence of editing, we're not doing that right now. What we're doing right now is taking Zoom calls, making them look better, putting overlays, uploading them to YouTube, etc. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Because I recently I was publishing to YouTube and then stopped for a long time, and now I've started to see the value again of YouTube, and it's starting slowly to bubble with the interest. I was just wondering, because I've got someone who helps me publish it to YouTube now, so I was just wondering whether that's part of the package for all of your clients if they asked for it. Or are you finding most of your clients are still audio, their preference is audio only?
Yeah, the majority is audio only. I would say probably 20% of our clients are doing video of some sort. And just to give you a rough idea of what they're looking like on costs there. So if you're doing 120 minutes a month, which is basically 4 30-minute episodes a month, one a week, for the audio, show notes, social media, and uploading, that's going to run you $279. And then for video editing and uploading, that's going to be another $120. Okay. So you're looking at about $399 for audio and video.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Cool. We'll hop off here pretty much right away. But the one last clarification, the minute number, that's for the raw number, right? Not
Yes,
the
that's
final
the
edited
raw,
number.
not the final. Yep.
Right. Cool.
And so with that being said, you don't want to upload 20 minutes of you chit-chatting with your guest, right?
Right. No, that's
Because
helpful.
that gets counted against you.
No, that's a nice way for you to limit it too, because I mean, other companies might not treat it that way, and that's just a little bit more time sifting through chatter and stuff like that. So
Right.
good. That's a good business tactic there. I think that sounds like a great idea. Cool. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been a super informative conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to refer you some business. It sounds like a great thing you got going, and we really appreciate the time and effort that you and your co-founders have put into building that. So we wish you the best of luck, and of course, feel free to reach out to any of us if we can continue to be of service to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Ethan. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we'll catch you later.
Thanks,
Kevin. Cheers.
Bye-bye.